Mushroom Cult, and today we are talking about liquid cultures. But before we get into that, I just wanted to give everyone an update on our streak from last week. So this is the presumptive Agar parasitica from New Zealand, and you can see on this 1v9 we've got some really nice growth. So I'm gonna isolate this onto a fresh plate and then grow it out, and I want to do a spore solution next too. Maybe I can get some more viability because out of those 3 plates is the only one that showed up. But as a recap, so Zach and I have been doing cultivation classes. Our first class was last weekend, and we have another one scheduled for not this weekend but the weekend after. And I kind of wanted to give Zach the chance to talk about some of his ideas, and he's got some really cool things that we're going to be covering. So
yeah, for the class, we've been working together on that almost 2 years, and we kind of split the growing process into little chunks. But like he was saying, last weekend we launched a presentation that has all those chunks put together. It doesn't cover every single thing, but you go through the entire grow process. And I really like the way that format is, better than our previous classes, just because it feels more complete. Is that how you feel about it?
yeah, I agree. The first one was a hit. You know, we did all the preparation of materials on the first day. It was pretty lecture intensive on the first day, and then it was cool because, you know, everyone would come back on the next day and get to use all the same materials that they just made, and then we did all the processes, and everyone left with, you know, a huge bag filled with mushroom goodies and things that are, you know, important for growing mushrooms. So I think it's a really concise class compared to our other class that was, like what he was saying, we kind of spread it out over time so that, you know, people would be able to experience the growth and problems along the way. But this is more of, you know, a hands-on workshop and everything all at once, so that you'll be able to know how to grow mushrooms right after that weekend. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone came from out of town, so it's not crazy if you're not in Denver, you can come in.
Yep.
We have a small class number. It's like maxed out at 6. So you should register soon, and you know, you'll get a lot of really personalized attention. Yeah, should we move on to the next thing?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions about the classes? We're also going to be doing some online demos, so it's very similar to the class. It's just not going to have any of the hands-on attention. But our first online class is going to be February 13th. And if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to email us. mushroomcult.net is where you can sign up, and freshfromthefarmfungi@gmail if you have any questions and want to reach out to me. But yeah, they're starting to fill up, but we still got some spaces left. And like he said, you know, people are coming in from out of state, which is really cool. We get to see, you know, a lot of different types of mushroom growers too. Like, you know, if you're very novice, you should not feel intimidated. And if you're an expert, there's definitely, you know, a lot to be gained from just watching new people and seeing from their mistakes, as well as, you know, getting one-on-one coaching from Zach and I. So yeah, it's been really enjoyable so far, especially for us too.
Yeah, I really love it. And each of us brings a different perspective. So I notice things that Gary doesn't notice, and he mentions things that I don't think, you know, that I don't think about. So you're getting multiple perspectives. You're getting one-on-one attention. You're able to see other people make mistakes and then see the correction. So you're able to like learn while you're watching in a way that you can't really off of just watching somebody work in their lab on YouTube here. It's really, I think it's valuable for me. I'm learning, and I think the students leave with a real sense of accomplishment, as well as like knowing the foundation and what is possible. I think it's really cool.
Yep, and then someone asked if it's gonna be on Zoom. So I think that's what we're planning right now is a Zoom and live type demonstration. So more info on that. But
Yeah, so when you sign up, you'll buy a ticket and then we'll send you a link, whether it's Zoom or a different platform. We haven't really finalized that, but I'm thinking we'll use Zoom. Yeah, and we'll have a moderator, so we'll have someone watching questions. We're gonna be busy, you know, lecturing and demonstrating, but we'll have somebody watching for questions, so you won't get left out on that. Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about is just jars and lids. It might sound like a boring topic, but there's a lot of different possibilities with a jar lid and what container you use for either grain spawn or liquid culture or agar. And so one that's the most common would be just the standard jar lid that you get off of a mason jar. This one's a wide mouth. I put in an injection port, so they're modifiable. You can just poke a hole and put in an injection port, or you can use a heat tolerant silicone. It's usually red, so that you can inject with a needle. Because a lot of mycologies, it's really common to use syringes in mycology for spores or for liquid cultures. So injection ports are really awesome because you don't have to open the lid, which risks a lot of contamination. So there's this, and a problem with these kind of lids is that they fall apart really easily. So you have to be aware of that and plan ahead, but that's your basic lid, and there's nothing wrong with it. I use it for grain spawn. This is a jar that I use for what's called the no-pour method, where you just put some agar in here, you use it as a petri dish that's reusable. That's the basic container. The next one is, do you use those lids?
Yep. Yeah. So I like to use those until they get rusty, and then I'll throw those out and then get a plastic lid. But you know, they last probably about 6 or 7 cycles before you'll start to see some flaking, and then if any mycelium will get into where it starts to flake, then it will corrode that edge. So that's kind of when I get rid of them. But I like them. You know, they come with most of the jars, and it's kind of easier to punch a hole in those compared to drilling. If you look up my video on how to make grain spawn jars, I have a whole demonstration on drilling it out and then using the red silicone caulk. But I feel like it's a lot easier to punch out a bunch of lids with the metal ones than with the plastic ones. So that's kind of my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then another, here's a different size. It's like a little jelly jar compared to this one is the half pint, and then there's even a smaller size. But the lid size, there's wide mouth and then there's a standard mouth. So they fit on different size jars. This one is a plastic lid, like he was mentioning. It has a hole drilled in it. I'm not sure if you can see, there's a little hole, but on the inside there's a filter fabric. So this filter allows air to move in and out without getting contamination inside. And an interesting thing about this, if we have a pen, you can poke the filter out and put the lid back on, and you can use it to fruit like something like lion's mane or oyster right out of that hole. So you can kind of just use a lid like this. It's washable, it's pressure cookable, it won't melt. The important thing is to make sure that it's polypropylene 5. If you have different lids, they might melt.
All right, so someone asked about the seal on the lid. Is there a seal? So I think the plastic ones, for the most part, get a seal as they're cooling, and you can screw it directly on. For these lids, there isn't a seal. You can flip them around and use them like this, but I think that it's actually better to leave them like this, because then you have the air exchange through the threading, where the air exchange is through the actual filter. So it has a nice seal around the lid, and then air exchange through the filter.
Yeah.
And then,
so I guess I'll poke that out. The filter on this one, you can kind of push it out. So there's a fiber filter that allows air through, and this one, that hole is where the air goes through the lid, and you can use it to fruit out of on certain species. So it's a pretty good system. For grain spawn, it'd be great. It can be good for auger as well, if you wanted to make an auger plate out of this. It's pretty good.
So someone, let's go to the live chats. All right, so plastic lids with a stepper bit for a larger opening. All right, cool. So just a fancy drill bit to make the holes. Let's describe.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different lids, and then kind of a step up from that would be these injection port lids with filters, which I'm going to be adding these to my Etsy store in the next couple of weeks, so you can get them off of my Etsy store. And this is just either wide mouth or narrow mouth. So here's another jar size. You got quart. They come in two different mouth sizes. The wide mouth, these two are wide mouth, and these two are standard mouth, but they're very different jars. These are really awesome because the air that goes in is filtered different. You can get different filters. This one's 0.45, which might be a little borderline, but you can get 0.22 micron, which filters out most any contaminants that will go in. So this is really important when you're using liquid culture, because you're going to be sucking liquid out with a syringe, and that air needs to be replaced because you're causing a vacuum. So this allows you to take all of the liquid out without contaminating it. And then the injection port is just a way to get things in and out without opening the lid, because you're having a huge risk of contaminants getting in there, but your risk is a lot smaller. It's not zero, but your risk is a lot smaller with a tiny syringe going into that little injection port. So that can be used for liquid culture, can be used for grain spawn, or you could use this lid for if you were going to make a reusable auger plate. You could use this lid in place of the, oops, I picked the wrong one, but you could use that lid in place of the metal lid, so that you could inject spores or liquid culture directly into your Petri plate without having to open it. So that would increase your success. So there's.
Okay. So for everyone just joining in now, we are covering all the different types of lids for liquid cultures right now, and I guess it could also be used for grain spawn.
Yeah, so these are really great for grain spawn because you don't have to open the jar. And anytime that you can reduce a step, like opening a jar, you want to take that, change your procedure so that you don't have to open the jar. And that would just be learning how to use a syringe with liquid culture on grain spawn. And that's really interesting. And they're really clean. They can be reused. Run them through the pressure cooker up at 250 degrees, and then they're going to hold their form. They're not going to melt. And these injection ports, I have a video on my TikTok where I just really roughly jammed it with a syringe 40 times, and it's not great, but it's still usable. It'll still hold water. If you're careful, you can use it, 100 or more times. So just, it's totally, and they're easy to replace. So if you did ruin one, they're easy to replace.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. So then a next step up, well, I guess just to throw this out here, you can put in even a larger jar. This has the same lid. It's the wide mouth. I think even you can go up to a gallon. I think they have the same lid opening. I'm pretty sure. I haven't used one. But you can get very large jars that will work off of this lid. So just keep that in mind. If you're trying to do a giant liquid culture or giant grain spawn, you can use these same lids for lots of different jar sizes.
So someone asked, are the syringe filters designed for directional flow?
The ones that I've used, the flow could go either way.
Yeah.
They're designed, for a lot of different things. There's different materials in the filter. The outside looks the same, but the actual filter inside this disc can be made of a lot of different things. It can be made of glass. It can be made of Teflon, polypropylene. There's lots of different materials. Some are going to be hydrophobic, some are going to be hydrophilic. So the idea is that you would have a syringe filled with a solution, and you would push that solution through the filter. So you'd be putting liquid inside, and it would filter things out. That's not very useful for what we're doing. We don't want to trap the mycelium in the filter. We want it to filter the air. So it can go in or out on this one. There might be some that are directional flow.
Yep. And so my experience with the longevity of these, so we talked about these the fabric filters in this one, and these tend to last, about half the lifespan as these polypropylene filters in my experience. And honestly, I think that the injection pour is probably the first thing to go on these lids. So that's just a comment on the longevity. I've been using the same lids I made last spring, and all of them are still, very viable. So I feel like at least a year in commercial regular use.
Yeah, so then the next step up from just a filtered injection lid, so there's different ways to do this. You can do it with the heat sensitive or the heat tolerant silicone. You can use a large hole with polyfill or cotton as kind of like a rudimentary archaic way. This is really the more modern method, just using those tools. But then there's kind of another step up. This bottle you can get at a Lion's Mane shop down in Denver. They're really good people, and they designed this, and it's the media extractor. So you can use it for liquid culture, like you see in here. There's mycelium in the liquid. It has a stir bar to spin the mycelium, break it up, and you can use this to suck that liquid into the syringe without opening your container. Okay. Yeah, you usually have to prime it, but there's liquid culture going straight into that syringe without ever opening the container, or even using a needle, so your needle's still clean. It has the same feature. It has the filter, but it has a pipe on the inside. It has a check valve so that water won't go back the other way. It prevents contamination that way, and you can just attach many syringes if you wanted to use all this and just make syringes for sale, or if you wanted to, like I've been doing, I just keep it in here as my master bottle and take this and inoculate jars with it. So this is a really cool tool. You use these?
Yeah, I use those all the time, especially for, I like cordyceps, and my future plan is to implement some kind of a peristaltic pump on the end of that, and that way, you wouldn't have to drop a million syringes, but there are alternatives to that too. I've seen people rig up some like bovine injection needles that you can connect to it and almost inoculate it like a gun.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of versatility with this, and these tubings are probably the first part to go. So just be aware that it's not going to have as long as a lifespan as this, as far as the expendable parts, but it is, you can fill up a huge bottle, so you get a lot more use. But as he just showed, you can get jars with the same size. So I really like these though, because the stir bar and these long tubes come in handy, especially with some really thick mycelium. Like you can see this or the lion's mane is kind of building up and getting chunky. So that's why I like the tubing compared to when you have to pour with this. That thick mycelium is going to clump up right where your needle is. So
yeah, it gets caught in the syringe.
Yeah, so I feel like these you can get the very last drops.
Yeah, these are great. So you can get these at the Lion's Mane store. They're in Denver. I think they'll ship them, so you can check out their website. Really good design and good people if you head down there.
Yep, and I think there's a newer version that has metal lure locks and stuff.
Oh, yeah. So they have upgraded this part so it's easier to use with a metal piece, and it has a cap. Currently I'm just using a syringe as a cap, but yeah, they've upgraded that as well, but this is their basic model.
All right, so someone asked about pressure cooking with the filters. So I always twist it all the way on, and when it cools, it tends to really give a nice seal on the edge of the jar. But I think it really depends on what type of filter, because if you're using a heat sensitive filter, then it's just gonna plug it. So what are your thoughts on pressure cooking?
So on this one, I just seal the jar down as tight as I can, whereas on these metal jars, I would give it I would put it on loosely so that the lid is loose, and that way it doesn't create a vacuum. But I've never had a problem with these plastic ones. Like, I saw some lids that you made that you used a different filter. It was a lot smaller, so maybe those don't allow as much air in or out.
Yeah, I think it's more the material,
Oh, yeah,
because
the
you just
material
have to
design.
make sure that it is autoclavable. I've seen a lot of cheap knockoffs on Amazon that they don't make it with the same material, so they'll melt in the autoclave, and I don't even think those come sterile. So,
Yeah.
yep, something to look out for.
Yep. So I really like this model, and I really like this extractor is really great. And I kind of took this design with the help of lion's mane and redesigned it to make it just a little different for people who are looking for something that's different. So just putting it on one of these lids, either the wide mouth or the narrow mouth, so that you can choose a lot of different jar sizes. You can choose a half gallon, you can choose a little jelly jar. Any of these would fit on any jar size instead of just the media bottle, if you're interested. And I have this kind of a novel use for it. So what we've done here is I took basically the same, and these are gonna be available at Lion's Mane as well.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
You
put
get-
them at their store.
Yep, you guys saw it first.
Yeah, so this is kind of novel, not that novel, but I'm just putting it on a mason jar lid. It gives you a little more space. It has an injection port in it, so you can inject. Or you can still do it with the other one, but you'll have to pop off a filter. It's really no big deal. It's easy to do, but I just wanted to put an injection port in there. It has the filter. This one's a glass filter, which is I think more environmentally friendly because we're not using plastics. Like Teflon is pretty toxic, so it's glass. That's really cool.
And it'll withstand the autoclave.
It'll withstand the autoclave for sure. And also Matt over at Lion's Mane, he tested these and he saw that some of them have a little bit of wiggle when you're running fluids or water through them, whereas this one was really more stable. So it's a better filter than some. But this has the check valve, and it has the metal lure lock that they updated. So you just take the cap off and you can pull your syringes from that. So the interesting thing about this is that what I've done is I've made the pipe just a little bit above. I did a no pour, so I just melted some agar and I put a little layer of agar in the bottom, and I made sure that my hose was above the agar so it doesn't get clogged. So now what we can do is treat this like a petri dish for quality control. So you buy a liquid culture from Gary, and I'm confident that they're clean, but you should never assume. So you take your liquid culture, you put a few drops directly in here just to check and make sure, check his process, check your own process, and if you see it growing clean, you can just turn this into a liquid culture, whereas traditionally you would have to have a petri dish, do your quality control, then you would have to take a sample and then move it to your new container. So now we don't have to move between different containers. We have one container. We'll quality control here. If it looks good, then we can put our liquid culture in. And I'll show you how that's done really quick. So I just have a second jar here that we're gonna pretend this is liquid culture media, like 4% honey or 4% Caro syrup. And I've pressure cooked this and let it cool down. And I have the same setup here. And I will, I guess first, I have a little compartment up here, a secret compartment that I can drop down a stir bar. So I put that on a stir plate, and now it's going to scrape the mycelium off the surface of the agar without having to open the container. The stir bar is already in there, just hiding up in the lid. And then I have, this is my clean liquid culture. All I have to do, you need to be careful because we're opening the jar, but all you have to do is pull the lure lock off, like that. And then you take this one and pull this one off, just like that. Then I can connect my clean liquid culture to my quality controlled plate, and I just kind of dump it in, and you can see it's starting to fill. You can see the bubbles. The air is filtered going in, and so I know it's clean. And I didn't have to use a syringe because this is a large amount of liquid. it's filling up the liquid culture, and if I put that on a stir bar, it's gonna scrape the mycelium into the liquid culture. And it may sound complicated, but I'm not having to waste materials, or I'm also not having to use multiple containers. It's all in one container. And I'm not having to, I still have to pressure cook multiple, like 2 containers, but it's pretty simple. As long as you're careful, then I've made a liquid culture in fewer steps. It may have some problems. I would love to hear like your criticism on this, because it seems a little, it's a little crazy, but.
So my first, this is my first time seeing this, so I think that possibly getting a longer tubing might be beneficial. I don't know why, but I feel like this is gonna get worn out pretty quickly.
Mhm.
But as far as the setup goes, it's pulling that liquid really nicely. There could be issues with leakage, but they're plastic lids, so I feel like that's good. So someone had mentioned about clogs in this system with
Mhm.
mycelium. Like, what are your thoughts on clogs, and how could you fix them? And then someone also asked about what type of glass this was. I'm not really sure on that.
It says GF 0.22 microns, so I'm not sure. You can't even see that on the camera.
Yeah, here, let's see.
But it,
Yeah, it's not focusing.
yeah, I'm not sure. It's a glass filter is probably what GF stands for.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a glass mesh. So it's kind of like a sponge made out of glass, and it allows air to go through, and it'll block contaminants. So yeah, I've basically made a liquid culture. I just put it on a stir plate, and then I have liquid culture. So these lids are gonna be available at Lion's Mane probably in the next month. And you can grab 2 of these, put them on whatever jar you please, and then you can have liquid culture in this novel way.
So I just thought of something really cool. If you go on Hardy Diagnostics website or some of the other big box microbiology distributors, they make sterilized bags that you can get different fluids in. So I'm thinking like you will have a huge array of different liquid culture media like TSB, different types of whatever. You can have a wide array of selection of medias, and then you can just order them. You won't have to worry about a pressure cooker. So I feel like this can totally eliminate pressure cooking via liquid culture. That's what I just thought of right now.
Yeah, you would want to make sure that your agar gets sterilized. So
That's true.
But you could do that in an Instant Pot if you just run it long enough. Yeah, so basically it's kind of like in an IV bag, and you could put whatever media directly onto here, and that way, yeah, you would make sure that you're getting a clean.
Yeah, so it's a way to
properly maintained.
verify your process too.
Yeah, so anyway, I'd love any of your thoughts, if that's interesting to you.
Yeah.
I think it's worth trying.
So someone talked about clearing clogs.
Oh yeah, so clearing clogs. So the idea would be, so on this one has been in there for quite a while, and you can see that it's like growing on the tube itself. This one hasn't clogged, so the hole, or the pipe size is large enough that for the most part mycelium is not going to clog in there. I do have some liquid cultures at home where, like reishi or oyster, where it's growing like a thick layer of mushroom leather on the surface, and obviously that won't go through. But the clogging that I have experienced has been using syringes, and it'll clog and you'll have to push it back out and refill. But that's not the case that I've found on this. So once you have this out, you have to clean it, and you can use like a pipe cleaner and just run it down the center to clean the mycelium out, and you should do that before it gets dried. If it dries on there, it's harder to clean off. Just clean it up freshly. And I guess you would want to do the same thing with the check valve. Just run clean water through it to flush it out. Don't let it dry on there. And same thing, like you can reuse syringes, but you don't want to squirt your liquid culture out and allow a little pellet to dry inside because it's tough to get out. You can use a Q-tip, but it's just better to clean it out when it's still wet.
Yep. Cool.
So that's kind of the evolution of jars. You can just start with the regular mason lid. You can modify it. You can try a plastic lid with a filter puck on the inside. You can try these injection with the micron filtration on largemouth or small or standard mouth. You can put those on any size jar that fits it. And then the next would be the media extractor for making spore syringes or liquid cultures, which is really pretty efficient. Or next you can try the combining no pour with a liquid media bottle with a kind of IV sort of filling system, and maybe eliminate some of your sterilization needs, maybe eliminate a few containers, including quality control in the whole system.
Cool. So someone asked about stainless steel. I use stainless steel lids. I've ordered them, about a year ago, and they're still working well, but my feelings after using them for a year is that the lids itself are going to outlast all the components. So over time, changing in and out these filters, it kind of wore out that hole. So I don't know. Eventually I'm just going to have these lids that won't hold the filter, so then I can add tape to it, and then it's just gonna get messy. So honestly, I prefer the plastic lids because they're gonna hold up about the same amount of time, and they're a lot cheaper. But it's kind of a personal preference. If you do go with stainless steel, you gotta get the little rubber seal, or you have to put some silicone on the outside, so when you're screwing down the threading, it creates a vacuum, where the plastic lids are nice because you just kind of forcefully create that vacuum, and I've never had any issues with that.
Yeah, so the stainless steel, if you're doing liquid culture, it'll leak out. So unless you have that rubber gasket.
Yeah, so I added a gasket, or got ones that come with a gasket, but that's just another piece that's gonna get
This
dirty.
one holds water, as long as if you put it on loose, it'll leak, but tighten it down and it'll hold water.
Yep.
Even after pressure cooking, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, run down to Lion's Mane. Like, what do you have over there? You have...
Yep, so I just dropped off a bunch of plates today. We do pre-pour plates. We have liquid cultures, slant cultures, master's mix bags, 5-pounders. I might be moving away from those soon, so this could be the last batch of those for a while. Or, I'm gonna be switching over to something else soon. They've got tons of literature, some of the best mushroom books, and just a lot of really good people. So it's like kind of fun to have this community. Zach and I, we often will go over there on, an evening one day and just mingle with people. And it's really cool just to have a community that, is like you guys, and everyone's enthusiastic about mushrooms. And I've learned a lot from these people, and just, collaborating. It's really cool that Zach created this product that is very similar to their product, but we care mostly about the community, so they allowed for Zach to be able to sell his product in their store. So there's lots of options out there for everyone, and it's been growing a lot. I had to kind of pull some of my plate products off of Etsy because the sales there have been picking up so much that I couldn't keep up. But I would much rather serve the local community with the plates because they're so sensitive, and they're a very delicate product. But I still have all my cultures on Etsy, and I just made about 50 fresh plates that I'm going to be putting up there. And I got some new strains coming this winter, but check out Zach's Etsy, Mushroom Cult.
Yeah, you can find it on mushroomcult.net. There's a link for it. I'm going to be updating it pretty soon. It doesn't have all these pieces on there, but I'll be getting them on there pretty soon.
Yep. So someone asked about V9 agar. So my recipe, yeah, that's what I use right here. You can see, I feel like you probably just didn't add enough agar. I do 15 grams per liter, and all I do is straight up 1 liter V8 juice. You can use the fruit juice too. It has a lot lower of a pH, so I prefer the tomato, but if I can't find it, then I'll use a different blend. And then also 10 grams of potato flakes per liter. So the potato flakes helps keep the moisture content down, and 15 grams, mix it all up. I have a video on prepping. I don't know if I did my V9 agar. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you check our Fungi Fridays agar prep, I think I did some V9, but it's 15 grams agar, 1 liter V8, and then 10 grams potato.
So you're not having to add water?
Nope.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, but you can see how thick it gets.
Yeah, you can't see through it.
Nope.
Cool.
Yeah, so anyone else have any questions while we're here? Let's go to the live chat.
Yeah, so I guess for people who came in late, we teach class. We have been teaching classes together for close to 2 years, and in the past and we still do. We have the segments, like we're doing auger and lab skills, grain spawn, and then bulk. So it's kind of split up. But recently we launched, even last week, we launched the whole package in a weekend class, and we had people coming in from out of town, and we went through. First day we had some lecture, and we prepared all the materials. All the students made their own materials. We sterilized them in class. Then the next day we went through all the skills, demonstration, and hands-on personal training, really. So we went through auger, we went through every life cycle of every part of the life cycle of the mushroom, did grain spawn and bulk substrate inoculations. So the students left with all the work that they did, and they made everything in class. So they really leave with a full understanding. It's not like somebody brought materials and you just learn how to use them. They also know how to make the materials. They've seen the whole process and got to ask their questions, and they had really personalized instruction. If somebody's hand needed to move just a little bit, that was pointed out to them. We try to be critical, like we're not mean, but we try to be critical so that you can learn as fast as possible and feel how you naturally would do something, and then the correction, and so you can feel the difference and see how that produces better results.
Cool. So we're getting some questions coming in. Someone asked about using grain water for liquid culture. So that's a really cool idea. I've never done that before. My initial thoughts are that it might not have the carbohydrates that it needs, but it's coming from the grain, so yeah. I'm not sure, but that's worth testing out. Really cool. I prefer to use honey water, 4%. I also like TSB, tryptic soy broth. I also like to use just like a buffered peptone, so BPW is a good one. Those are the 3 main that I use. I've heard coconut water with some sugars could work.
I think it's pretty wide open. I've just been using honey because that's what he does, and I haven't really experimented with a lot of different.
Caro is a good one. It's nice because it's clear, so a lot of people get confused using honey because they think that it'll caramelize, but my experience is you just have to get really good quality honey, and then you won't have any sediment. So I get mine from Bjorn's honey. Shout out to Bjorn in Boulder. So he gives me a good hookup, and it's really local. They filter their honey so it's pure, and then I feel like
So someone was mentioning using the grain water soak. You can use that in your auger recipe just like you would do potato dextrose. Like potato dextrose, if you wanted to make it from scratch, you'd boil potatoes and save that water and add your sugar. You can do the same thing with grain. Take the grain soak, and in place of the potato water, you put the grain. It works really great, and it's widely said that you want to rotate your recipes. So you're not using only malt extract every single time. You'd want to rotate with malt and potato and grain, just so that you're not getting stagnation.
All right, so can you show the lab? So I've got plenty of videos of the lab if you just look at my YouTube channel. Having issues with condensation on no pour. Oh, that's a good question. So how do you think?
Yeah.
I feel like the difference in temperature from pulling it out, maybe you let your pressure cooker cool in front of a flow hood so that the water temperature comes down gradually, and then, you know, when it hits like 120 or 115, pull the lid off, let it cool very slowly again, and then pull out your auger. So you just control the cooling aspect, maybe.
Yeah, if it cools down slower, that should help. But that's a pretty common problem for no pores, because the auger is boiling in the container, and if it's a sealed container, then that liquid sticks to the sides. I don't find it that big of a problem. The only problem with condensation would be, I guess, two problems. If you're using a liquid culture, then you would have a large amount of water floating around, but you're only going to be putting in a couple of drops anyway. And then, so the next problem is that it spreads contamination. So that means that your process isn't good. If there's no contamination in there, the condensation isn't going to spread contamination, and it's not really a problem. And you can also store them upside down, so the condensation's on the lid instead of on the surface. So it's annoying, but I don't think it's like a real problem.
Yep. So someone asked a question about how long liquid cultures will last before they senesce. So that is really dependent on the strain. I mean, I've had some pink oyster strains that are super fragile, and you put them in the refrigerator and they won't grow after, you know, just a week in the refrigerator. But then the ones that I have, I refrigerate for 4 months at a time before I'll get to the end of that batch, and they're completely fine. And I've also used, you know, some liquid cultures that I grew out from 4 years ago and put them onto Agar, and they'll grow. But some of them, like a shiitake strain from 2 years ago, it senesced and died off. So I'm not, I mean, I keep all of my cultures in the same exact environment. I monitor all my refrigeration and incubation, and I think it's really just a strain dependent thing, which, you know, I feel like people should be breeding for longevity, which isn't really talked about. I mean, from a breeder perspective, like, I want to get strains that will outlast, you know, ups and downs and a long time, so that I'll have that strain for a while. So it's something to consider as the community moves forward with selecting for better phenotypes for longevity. I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's see, we got rotation of Agar. So shaggy mane, do you have any experience with shaggy mane? I've never grown that before.
Yeah, I've had it on plates, but I've never gone on to grain, because it's not my favorite. I don't like eating it. And mostly because I've been picking it from the wild. You have to get it young. In my opinion, if you get one that's more mature and it starts getting any of that black, I think it gets a really funky flavor. I don't like it. So I have it on plates, but I've never really grown it out. Some people love it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. Has a very short shelf life too.
Yeah, incredibly. Like, I would pick it and drive home and it's already gone bad.
Yep.
So.
Alright, so good substrate for Pleurotus nabrodensis. I've never grown that before.
It's kind of like a trumpet, like it's like a king oyster a little bit. So it would probably be Master's Mix. Is that what you use for oysters?
Yeah, just Master's Mix or supplemented sawdust. I would try it with that. I'm not experienced with that mushroom though. So should one keep track of generations for liquid culture. So I like to do that, but mostly I'm just observing every transfer that I make. If it starts to look slow or tired or, contaminated, then I'll just go back to the original stock. I always have slants, and then I'll pull my slant onto something like V9 so it gives a nice burst of life, and then I'll go into liquid culture, and then I'll stretch that liquid culture for a couple generations until it just looks tired, and then go back to the beginning. I think that the only other way is to fruit out some of the liquid culture and then collect spores and then introduce some spores from the wild or like a really strong commercial strain, and then you'll get that vigor back. But the more times that happens over and over, the more chances for mutations, and eventually the strains will start to not behave normal.
Yeah, so that's just getting familiar with breeding and messing around with it, and then also library management, keeping records, documentation, and instead of throwing out your last plate, keep it and just document it.
Yep. So someone says positive growth traits on mycelium translating to fruiting. So, especially with oyster mushrooms, the speed of growth is equivalent throughout all phases of the process, but there's pinning parameters that you have to select for, and a lot of other features besides just growth rate and vigor.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about being able to visually identify what mycelium is going to produce good mushrooms. There's so many different things that you can select for. There's temperature, there's nutrient, digestibility, there's speed of the mycelium, there's pinning rate, there's like humidity, like what does it like to do? And I don't think you can visually see that from, it's pretty. I don't know that pretty equals a good commercial strain. It might,
Yeah.
but I think you might find that in one strain, the slowest mycelium produces the best result. Like you really, I wouldn't throw it away just because it's not the fastest.
Yeah, my the lion's mane that I grow looks horrible on Agar, but then once it finally gets to fruiting, it's massive. So I feel like I've come across instances of both ways where an oyster mushroom will get really rigorous. Like one of the cultures that he gave me before, it was super good on Agar, super good on grain, but then it just wouldn't pin. But I feel like, maybe it was a warmer climate. Oyster, it came from the summer. So there's lots of things to consider other than just, wow, it looks cool.
Yeah, and that's, like if you're talking to mycologists on Facebook groups, they're all about like picking the prettiest and fastest. And I think that's probably a good strategy, but I think there's more there.
Yep, I could agree with that. All right, so let's see. Yep. Oh yeah, shout out to Myers Mushrooms. Got this sick hoodie from Lucas.
Because you have a Bubba's Barrel from them and also Flow Hood?
Yeah, and he's definitely hooked me up a few times with bags, and really good member for the community.
Yeah, that's where I got my Flow Hoods. If you see the videos in my lab, I think they're just on TikTok right now, but I got 2 Flow Hoods and it's going to be used for class, so there's a lot of room for students. They're pretty nice. They're really pretty nice. They're affordable, so it's not like the most fanciest expensive Flow Hood that you can get. I think it's pretty affordable, and it's a really good quality, really nice size and shape, easy to use.
Yep, yeah, I'll stand by it. I tested it the day that I got it, and I've poured probably 600 plates now and no issues, so definitely stand by those Flow Hoods if he ever gets them again. All right, so let's see, someone asked about PDA and MEA. So to me, those two nutrients are kind of interchangeable. For the most part, every gourmet species will grow on both PDA and MEA, and I like to just transition between the two so they don't get accustomed to one particular media. And I've seen a lot of people posting with charcoal yeast extract. I might start experimenting with that. So my past experience with the charcoal is that it was really helpful in plant tissue culture because it would buffer the pH changes as the plant is exuding different compounds into the agar from the roots. But I feel like the same could be true with mushrooms.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it definitely makes some good pictures. So my next plan for, pouring plates and getting them over to lion's mane is just adding some different types of media. So if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to email me. But look for his lids. They're going to be up on Etsy, and then these whole cool extractions that. What is the name of this product?
It's an extractor, but it's kind of a combination of no pour. I don't know the name. It's a quality control. I don't know. It's a beast. I don't know.
Mushroom Cult Beast.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
just the mushroom cult extractor lid, which is based on the lion's mane extractor, and they're gonna host my lids there at their store.
Yep.
And so their extractor is really great, and I just kind of modified it to fit something that I liked.
All right. So I feel like it's probably time to wrap it up here, but check out our class schedule at mushroomcult.net. Stay tuned for more Fungi Fridays. This was super fun. Maybe we can meet again. And thanks for joining, guys. Give us a thumbs up. Spread the word. Check out Zach's YouTube too. He's got Mushroom Cult on YouTube. Super detailed and really, soothing voice compared to me. So I like throwing those on.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, thanks for joining us for Fungi Friday. Check out our Etsy. I just put up some liquid cultures. I'm gonna have some more plates over the weekend, and stay tuned. We're gonna be doing some new cordyceps projects. So I got a bunch of deli jars and a bunch of different strains that I'm gonna be doing, and it's gonna be cordyceps 2.0. So stay tuned for that, and until next time, much love.